lessons do you think the world can learn from this pandemic? Which behaviors will become that that new normal that are going to impact the healthcare ecosystem, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, whether it's hospitals or health systems, or doctors or patients?
I think I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but just from a regulatory perspective and right through the pricing and reimbursement, some of the duplicative processes, I think there is some streamlining. There's obviously streamlining that's happening out of necessity, but I think a lot of that is something we can look at. Keeping patient safety and sort of evidence at the forefront, there's still a lot of processes that are just sort of, they've outlived their usefulness, or there's a way to sort of, like, for example, parallel review of different stages in the drug approval process. I think those are things that even to the supply chain level, those are things that it can probably something we can learn from and carry that forward. And I mentioned priority review in general processes. Those aren't in every country. In some places you just don't have that opportunity outside of maybe an emergency exemption, to get drugs to products to patients that are really in need, and there's not really an alternative. And so I think we've seen some of that in recent years, but I would expect to see a lot more of that. What that means is policies like, if there's a domestic clinical trials required, maybe waiving that if it's not necessarily applicable in this case, if you can draw on, data that sort of can show some of the same evidence, and maybe you can have a post follow-up just to get drugs to patients and things like that. I think we can see, certainly in some of the developing markets as well, where those processes are a lot more bureaucratic. You've kind of learned from this, you can't really afford to have that in place, I don't think, all the time, because it doesn't really leave you well equipped to prepare for the next crisis, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that the one that I think will be the most lasting will be the shortening of the time between initial molecule development and patient access. I think that however that happens, and that will probably look different in different places, but that's going to be the key piece that we retain beyond this, and that companies really and systems need to consider how to do that in the future.